Welcome to the Homesteading for Beginners podcast. This is Mona Weathers, your host. I have a really special episode for you today. I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's the longest episode I've done so far, and it's also the first coaching episode I've done on the podcast. So I think you'll really enjoy it if you're in the beginning stages of, learning how this all works, and you want to hear what it sounds like when I help people, coach people through this process. This is the perfect episode for you. I do want you to know that there is a clicking sound when I'm speaking. It's only on my side. I'm trying to figure out what it is and where it's coming from. So hopefully I'll have that figured out by the time I record another episode. But I wanted to let you know that sound is there. So enjoy the episode. Today I have a really special guest on the show. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Kelvin Crosby about all that he has going on and his hopes and dreams for becoming a homesteader. We're actually going to be having a coaching session where I'm going to be asking a series of questions to Kelvin to find out what best way to start his homesteading journey. He has a lot going on, and I'm going to let him describe himself and tell us about his situation. So please, Kelvin, I welcome you, first of all, for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And for me, whenever I start a radio show or anything like that, I always start off like this. And I say, it's so good to see you, even though I can't see you. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. And I always say that because when I lost all the clarity in my vision, it was a pretty devastating situation. And I had to really figure out how I was going to continue to run my own business and then also heal through losing both my left eye and my right eye to a point where they're not even functional anymore. And on top of that, I was born hard of hearing, and so which makes me considered deafblind. And as that kind of journey happened, I started really I gotta start healing. With that, people started learning me as a potter, and I said, why don't I be a potter and call myself the deafblind potter? And that's what we did. And then I started that business in December 2020 during the middle of COVID. And next thing you know, I hit over 1 million views on one of my videos and over 50,000 followers. So it was quite the journey. And as I was healing through my deafblindness, people were starting to heal through their pain, like suicides, because that was one of the things that I dealt with. Also, just dealing with identity issues, dealing with mental illness, all those things. We were in the mix of it, and I would just shape pottery on the wheel, talk about my deafblindness and my struggles, and the next thing you know, people's lives are being saved, and people are messaging me like, "You saved my life today," and it just gave you so much purpose. I'm like, all right, here we are. I'm the deafblind potter.
Yeah. We could almost end this podcast with that because it's just an amazing story in itself. Yeah. But the deafblind potter now wants to start homesteading. So
Yes.
my first question to everyone is like, why do you want to start homesteading?
When I was starting to write up my description for this show and to market it, and I was like, why do I want to do this? And as I kind of imagine, my life has been full of challenges, and I know homesteading just adds to that. But I'm like, but it's a challenge that if you create the right accommodation, you could be really successful. And so I'm like, this might not be a bad idea. So for me, why I want to homestead is one, to support my family, to make it easier to not have the burden so much on a dollar and make the burden more on hard work. Because truly, I'm a big fan of working hard and working really hard, and to be able to overcome my personal challenges. But I was like, if I could build a homestead that is accessible and I'm able to overcome those challenges and still be successful, that's a win-win. I'm off the grid. Well, depending on how we really go through this, is it good to go off the grid or not? And then how would you make that accessible to somebody like myself? So yeah, that's why I'm excited to go on this journey.
Yeah, I'm excited for you. And I love your spirit. Like, you don't let anything stop you. I love that. That is that's a homesteader mindset right there. So I feel like you already have what most people don't when they're starting. You already have the, like, I can make this work. However I
Yeah.
need to, I'll make it work. But the reason I asked why do you want to start homesteading is, like, is there something about homesteading? So this is how I describe homesteading. It's, uh, learning skills that allow you to be less dependent on the grocery store,
Hmm.
and community building. Those are types of things that I talk about when I talk about homesteading. It's not about having land. It's not about having all of the animals just to have them. It's about, providing for your family, maybe food that's better than the grocery store. Like, what are some of those things? When you think about homesteading, what are you thinking?
So when I'm thinking about is in homesteading, and it's like going to the grocery store is a major pain,
Mm-hmm.
and in trying to navigate the grocery store as a
Mm-hmm.
deafblind person, like personally, I have not stepped in a grocery store for almost 4 years. Was the last time I went to a grocery store, because I just really struggle being in that type of environment and not knowing where I'm going, and you're just going in circles and circles and circles, and like this feels like I'm just in a merry-go-round, just keep going in
Mm-hmm.
circles, and you don't know what you're doing, and every time I'm there, I'm like, So I love the idea of like, all right, can if I can these foods, all right, this is what we're gonna eat for this season. And for me, I eat the same food every day, so it's not like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
variety in my life. And so I just normally just like if I have 3 eggs every day for breakfast, and then have a cup of coffee, and then um I can usually have um like a fruit or something like that for lunch, and then just kind of keep building that up.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was one of those, if I could build it in my environment. So you have a garden or whatever, you have um chickens or some
Mm-hmm.
like animals that are not necessarily trainable, but or ways I can build the environment so that I can manage it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like those things that seem like so much easier than go to the grocery store. That seems
Mm-hmm.
like it's so much easier than having to learn an environment, and then it's always changing,
Mm-hmm.
and just even the gets there, like, is there going to be construction, is there, like, the other day I ran into a big pothole. I'm like, well, there's a sign there, but it wasn't blocking my way to get there. So next
Mm-hmm.
thing you know, I'm inside the pothole. So
Oh no.
and
Oh
so it's
no.
like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, and so this would be a way
Mm-hmm.
for the simplicity of it and the simpleness of it is
Mm-hmm.
where, yes, it's hard work, but it is, in a lot of ways, from a blind perspective, it's actually fairly simple because you already know the environment, and then you just need to build in the accommodations. That way, things that require vision, what are you going to do to overcome that? And
Mm-hmm.
there's different ways to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm so glad I asked that question the way I did, because first of all, I'm hearing you say you want to be able to shop from your property. Basically, you
kind
want
of
your grocery
essentially, yeah.
store to be on your property. But I had never, not being deaf or blind, I didn't think about that part of it for you. So I really appreciate you just explaining that. So okay. So my next question is, how many people are in your home, or that you will be wanting to feed with this homegrown food and raising
Yeah.
animals?
So we have my wife and me, and then
Mhm.
my wife and I, we foster kids. And so right
Okay.
now we have one foster child right now,
Okay.
and we've had him for about 3 years. And because of his behavior issues, we're not in a place to adopt him, but
Okay.
um, but we're still loving on him, caring
Hmm.
for him, and meeting where his needs are. And so, but we do want to grow that foster home
Hmm.
where, especially troubled kids that are really struggling, to just pull them out of the city and say, or pull them out of that environment and say,
Hmm.
here, let me show you what hard work looks like. It's
Hmm.
going to be a lot more hands on, it's going to be a lot more easy, and it's something that I can teach because,
Mhm.
like right now, we're in a situation where I can't really teach my foster son how to play basketball or baseball
Mhm.
or
Right.
but I can teach him how to fish. I can teach him
Mhm.
how to hunt. I can teach him
Mhm.
how to do like the plant. I can teach him how to
Mhm.
maintain animals. Like those are all
Mhm.
things that I could do because those are
Mhm.
the things that you don't need necessarily. You're asking the question: how does a blind man hunt? There's ways to
Mhm.
hunt if you
Okay.
can't see it,
Mhm.
but there's ways to do that,
Mhm.
and those are the things in my abilities as a blind person, as a father. I'm like, wow, that this could open up the door in a different way that I don't currently have being in the city because like we're
Mhm.
constantly getting on a bus or we're constantly getting a ride here or there and
Mhm.
going to just not having the ability to teach them things outside of just going to events, which you're not really doing stuff together. You're more doing things individually. So,
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. And there are so many lessons to be learned on the farm. My youngest daughter was born and raised on the farm, and she has a very, I would call it, well-rounded understanding of life, and she has since
mm.
she was very young. So, so how old is your foster son?
So the one we have right now is 13,
Okay.
and yeah, so we normally take in older kids. Part of it is, I mean, can you imagine me homesteading with a baby on my chest with a football helmet on his head and
Mhm.
just working the ground?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm
It's-
sure there's somebody out there that probably has done that. So.
yep, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's but no, we kind of went with the older kids because they're harder to get placed in homes.
Mhm.
And after parenting this current foster son that we have, I'm like, we've learned so many skills how to deal with trauma. It's like, oh, this is like if we had somebody just a little bit less traumatized
Mhm.
than the one we have, I'm like, it'll be a breeze for us. I was like, oh yeah, we got
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
And so our current foster son has so much trauma that it's like, ooh, this is a lot of work. Okay,
Mm.
here we go.
Yeah.
But he is making strides. So
That's awesome. Okay, so for right now, we're just gonna say 3 people.
yep,
Yeah. So eventually you might add that, but that'll probably be maybe after you've started your homestead and got your feet wet in the
mm,
lifestyle, right?
yeah, exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay, so my next question is, describe to me. You described it a little bit with like the grocery store. I kind of understand now, but what are your physical limitations? Like you can hear with a hearing aid, so you
Yep.
have hearing, but you have to have a hearing aid in order to do that. Is that correct?
Yes, and they do have to be charged. So
Okay.
you do gotta charge those bad boys,
Yeah.
um, and then I so so right now let's just use my pottery studio because that's currently where I'm at recording this podcast.
Mhm.
Is all right. So we think of this environment. What are my limitations here? Is I mean I can do basic glazing, like if I'm doing one color or whatever, but I
Mhm.
can't necessarily mix the colors and be able to do
Mhm.
what you go on the website for and see. And I have assistants to do that. Um, so those like figuring out the colors, and so and that's going to be one struggle that I'm going to deal with. But there are
Mhm.
ways to figure that out, especially with technology. And that is going to be one thing that I'm going to be kind of leaning
Mhm.
on is the technology side of it to be able to use my phone, to be able to, oh, this is a ripe apple, this is a ripe orange, or,
Mm.
um,
Right.
I mean, some of that stuff you can smell,
Mhm.
um,
And
and I could,
texture as well.
yeah,
You can feel
yeah.
it. Mhm.
So it's just learning what those feel like because
Mhm.
being in the city, I've never gone through a whole growing season with that stuff. So it's like,
Mhm.
all right, muscle memory, time and time again, getting that understanding will
Mhm.
build that. Um, I mean, a lot of blind people have guide dogs, so they're used to
Mhm.
maintaining their dog and helping their dog do the daily chores for the dogs and feeding
Mhm.
them and picking up after them, um and I mean I already know how to build things because
Mhm.
building with clay and cutting things with wood, and those are all things I don't need vision to do.
Mhm.
Um, I think one of the biggest limitations is getting lost on the property.
Mm.
like
Okay.
like if you get, so let's just say we're on a 2 acres. Cause what I
Mhm.
envision is not something massive like 100 acres. Like
Mhm.
as a blind person, I don't think that's realistic.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like all right, we have 1 acre, 2 acres. It is not getting lost
Mhm.
and and getting turned around. Cause
Mhm.
that's always a challenge
Yeah.
because when you get turned around, oh.
Yeah.
Oh man,
Right.
sometimes it can take you a little bit of time. Like I got
Mm.
lost the other day. It took me about 15 minutes to get back on my path.
Oh
I
wow.
was so frustrated.
Mhm.
So
Mm. Wow.
just figuring that out.
Yeah.
And I can think of some strategies already to do that. It's like roping out your property, and
Mhm.
the ropes have different textures to it. So
Mhm.
Um, so over here are all the animals, or you can have fences and textures, and that will help you ordinate yourself on the property.
Mhm.
So it's just figuring out what works for me to be able to be as successful as possible. And
Yeah.
so yeah,
That makes a lot of sense, and, thankfully, as far as the animals go, a lot of them make noise, so you could
yeah,
have, certain animals in certain places, paired with whatever you have next to it so that you know that that's always there. Quail, for instance, make noise, like, nonstop, so, except at night, they don't, I don't think, but
yeah.
but there are
Well,
animals that yeah.
yeah. Well, the other thing I thought about is knowing when predators are around, because
Mm,
that's something that I'm going to really struggle with.
mhm,
Is knowing that there is danger, because
right.
I mean, I've been hit by a car 3 times, so
Oh, well,
it's
yeah,
one of those like I'm not I'm kind of a daredevil a little bit where like I'm willing to take whatever chances I need to take to be successful.
yeah.
Um and um and so sometimes it doesn't turn out well for me. But that's where like, well, could I train? I don't know if a guide dog would be an ideal thing for my homestead because would I be able to work that dog correctly to the
Mhm,
environment, or would it just like having like a farm dog to be able to help protect the property?
mhm.
Um, that might be a solution, and then also that dog kind of learns my blindness and is able to help me and
Yeah.
different things like that.
Yeah,
So those,
yeah, for sure. The livestock guardian dogs they live with the animals. So they're with them 24/7. So
yeah,
if you were had a they're raised with them, they learn how to, protect them. It's not 100% because there are hawks and things like that that can pick
yeah,
up birds, but they are very good for that. So yes, for sure, I think you could get a service dog in that it's a farm service dog, like it takes care
hmm,
of a lot of the farm part for you. But we'll
yeah.
get more into that later. So I'm asking this question, but I think I already have the answer to this one. So where is your mindset? How strong is your desire to homestead?
So I think from a scale of 1 to 100, I think I'm at an 80. Like I
Mhm,
really want to do this,
mhm,
but if I had to put it on a realistic scale of like how am I going to get to this point, I would say I'm at a 60. So because I feel like my desire to homestead is really strong, and I
mhm,
want to do it yesterday, but be able to prepare to do this because I got to move my whole company as
mhm,
well. So I had to move my Deafblind Potter company, and I also got to move my cane business company, and then I also got to move my family, and
mhm.
so that the realisticness of it is like I'm at a 60. I'm ready, but now what do we need to do to get there
Right.
and to be able to get this win and make the move and make the change?
Mhm. Okay. Describe right now a little bit about your business since we're talking about it. Like,
Yeah.
what is your business?
So my first, my most favorite business is my pottery business, and where I make pottery, tell stories, and then and I sell the pottery. The other part to that is I have my own radio show called the Deafblind Potter Show, and where I make pottery and run my radio show at the same time, and I have a podcast on top of that, and so that is all about persevering through your challenges. So that's the first business, and it's more of a social media influencer type of business model. Um, and then my second business is manufacturing blind canes that light up. Um, or if we want to be politically correct, we can say white canes,
Mhm.
but most people know them as blind canes. And so that lights up like a lightsaber. You can see it from 100 yards away. And like I said earlier, I've been hit by a car 3 times, and all 3 times it's because the driver never saw me. And by the time I was in the road, it was too late.
Mm.
And this happens to about 87 million visually impaired people in the world.
Wow.
And because of that, I'm like, let me solve the solution. Well, I started building the business, lost my funding, and then now with the pottery business, was able to make enough money to rejuvenate that business.
Hmm.
And we went to market last February. And so now we're scaling the business to manufacture 10,000 semen canes a year so we
Okay.
can get them in the blind people's hands. So,
Okay. Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel like, I mean, as far except for the fact that you have to move everything physically, neither of those businesses need to be in the location that you are currently, right?
Yeah. They don't, as long as I have good internet to go into the radio
Hmm.
show
Yeah.
and do my live streaming stuff,
Hmm.
we're pretty solid. I mean,
Yeah.
there isn't really things that the internet is going to be the key
Hmm.
component to be successful. So,
Yeah. That's actually what I coach people about, which I don't think a lot of people think about. Like when we were looking for this property, internet was very important to me because most of the rural areas suck at the internet. They just don't work. Even if you
mhm.
get like some of the ones that the rural areas use, they're not usually that great.
Yeah.
But like you said in the beginning, or you don't have to be super far out of the city to have a homestead. We are only 15 minutes from our main little city. So
Yeah.
it's not very far, but we have 5.25 acres here. So it really depends on where you're living. Even in California, we were only 20 minutes from the town.
Mhm.
Um, and so there are a lot of rural areas that are just right out the city. They're county. They're owned by they're run by the county, not the city, which usually is better because the county allows for more animals generally than the city
Mhm.
does. So you kind of want to be in the county,
Yeah.
depending on what state. But so we talked a little bit about what why you want to homestead. But are there any other problems you feel like the homesteading life will solve for your family, other than I guess raising, having food? Is there anything else that you feel like you might
It,
solve?
what it will solve is my overhead for running my business and running other things will be a lot lower. Like my family needs will be a
Mm-hmm.
lot lower in cost. Um, the other thing is I don't have to travel,
Hmm.
because the other thing is if my businesses are on the property, so the pottery um,
Hmm.
studio, and then hopefully eventually my pottery school, which we'll talk
Hmm.
about later.
Yeah.
But the but everything is on the property, so I'm able to do everything there. So I don't have to get on public transit. I don't have to worry about trains. I don't have to worry about any of that.
Hmm.
Um, and then my wife is seen, so she can drive and do that. And
Hmm.
um, I think that's where from a what can I not do and what's going to be a challenge, like especially the only thing that really does concern me if there is an emergency, and
Hmm.
then trying to and it affects like my wife gets hurt or whatever, and so that's our only driver. Like, how do I get support?
Right.
Like, get it, like, but that's where you made a good point. Like, you gotta be good, have a good relationship with your neighbors and your
Mm-hmm.
community.
Right.
And so if you have that, I can maybe quickly run over. The other thing is, if you have your own property, and you can also have your own ATVs or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
did you know that blind people can drive those?
Mm.
Um,
I did not.
so there's so there's this technology you can put. It's a camera that goes on the front of them, and then it'll tell you can't go very fast. You're going like 5-10 miles an hour, but you
Mm-hmm.
can drive them, and it'll keep you on the path, similar to like
Wow.
autonomous vehicles. But um, if you're blind and you hit something, you're like, oh, okay, there's something
Right.
there, but you're not
Wow.
going fast enough to hurt yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's
yeah,
awesome. I had a friend who does have a homestead, and she's paralyzed from the waist down, and they gave her like this low cart. It was almost like one of those toy carts things that
okay, yep,
kids drive in, like, and that's what she used. She just hopped in that thing, drove all over the property, and so yeah, and it was a hilly property, but she was good at driving that thing around. Okay,
that's cool.
yeah. It's amazing what technology can do. I'm just thrilled to hear that there's all these things that are serving the, blind community in this way. I just love it. I'm not familiar with it, but I'm willing to learn, and I love hearing that there are these things. Okay, so we know that you have your wife and your foster son. Are those the only people that would be the helping hands on your farm? Or do you think you'd be in a position to hire anyone or anything like that?
I think I would probably eventually hire once we got. I mean, I probably had to hire for a certain thing like plumbing. I don't trust myself with plumbing or
Mhm.
electrical. So, um, I got a story about electrical. You want to hear the story?
Yeah.
Okay, so my one of my first inventions I ever worked on was a robotic blind cane.
Mm.
So this cane uses your brain, and
Mhm.
so you put this device on your head, and then it talks to your cane, and then you hold on to it, and it will guide you anywhere you want to go.
Wow.
And so I was building the first version. I hadn't hired anybody. I hadn't brought anybody on board yet, and I was like, I'm gonna build this chip and run this chip, and I'm gonna make this all happen. And
Mhm.
so I started plugging wires in, and then I ran the code on the chip that you needed to run, and I plugged it in, and then there's a big boom.
No.
And it exploded literally right in my like on the table,
Oh, no.
and it didn't catch on fire, but it had too much voltage going into the chip, and it made it blow up. And
Wow.
I was like, I think my chip days and electrical days are over.
That was the end of that, right?
Yeah, and so those are things that I'm like, I think I'm gonna outsource that.
Mhm.
And then yeah, plumbing. And then I'm trying to think. Probably like helping me build like big projects like a house or
Mhm.
the barn, whatever. I probably would have assistants hire that out as well.
Right.
Um, but there are like I mean, there are the party men like, but there are the companies that already prefabricate things. I'm like, if they already pre-built the structure, I probably could do the rest of it myself, like the drywall or
Mhm.
the um the installation of the cabinets and all that stuff. I could probably do all on my own. And so,
Mhm.
yeah,
Well, that's good. Like, I'm glad you have that already thought out. I'm talking about also more of like the day-to-day responsibilities. Like,
yeah. So
how much help? Yeah, how much help would you have
yeah.
in that?
So on the day to day, I think my goal is not to make the homestead be like a massive farm where
Mhm.
you got to be on the farm working it
Mhm.
24/7.
Right.
My goal would be is to make it so it's sustaining the family, because I got to run all these other businesses. So, and so I would say on the day to day, I probably would have somebody come in and do a visual inspection of the property to make sure things are not being rotted out or things are not broken or something like that. And I probably even that person could teach my wife as well, our foster son, or any other kids that we bring in, and then we just kind of start building that into the family. But in the beginning, I would think I would want somebody that really knows what they're doing to really kind of come in once a week just to supervise what we're doing and make sure I'm not blowing anything up or flooding anything out or anything like that. So
Yeah. That would be good to reach out to your community, and there are also ways you can like trade services. Like you could make beautiful pottery for your neighbor who comes out and just checks out some things for you. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that is definitely, and then even be able to loan out my kilns, because especially if they want to do, they're into auto making. We can make a cast of a mold and make the part for the car, or if we know the temperature, we can actually make it out of clay and replace that part with a clay part rather than a metal part. Or there's just so many ways to take. See, that's the beauty of pottery is you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of how much work you're going to put into it.
Right. And I have some ideas for you about your pottery relating to homesteading, but I don't know if I'll get into it this time, but I will share it with you at some point.
Okay.
So do you have any experience with raising livestock or preserving food or cooking from scratch or gardening? Do you have any experience currently?
No.
Okay.
And that's the part that people think I'm crazy.
No.
And I am. I am crazy.
Okay.
But I've had I've had 2 guide dogs, so I am familiar with how to maintain animals. But that's one animal at a time, so that's the
Right.
difference. But like I thought about, like, all right, if I had to maintain chickens, let's just use that as an example. Could I build a kind of a? I want the chickens to be free reign, but at the same time, could I create a free reign open air slash chicken coop that's on wheels, and then it just moves around, so that one, I'm protecting it from predators. Two is they're all staying in one area.
Yeah.
And
Those
put
are
it all.
yeah, you
Was that
just described a chicken tractor. That's what they're
okay?
called. Chicken
Yeah. So
tractors.
that's what I would do, is make a
Yeah.
chicken tracker,
Yeah.
and that way they got freedom. They're
Yeah.
safe, and
Yeah.
also we can then fertilize that land and
Mhm.
then plant on it.
Yeah,
So.
you're on the right path. You see, this is the homesteader mindset that I'm talking about. You're trying to make all the connections, and this is also about permaculture. Permaculture design is about making. I should send you the episode I did with my friend Larry Wheeler on permaculture, and he'll tell you it's not about designing a garden. It's about the processes that you do and how they work with the land that you already have. And this is one of the principles in permaculture, is that you don't grow or do anything on your land right away, because you need to watch it for a season or two. You need to see what it does. You need to see where the water flows and where, what's happening in the winter, and, that sort of thing. You need to witness what's happening. So, but yes, I don't have any, like, as far as mindset goes, I think you're there, and the skills you've taught yourself. Did you teach yourself how to do pottery?
I mean, I did take some classes,
Okay.
but I pretty much taught myself how to do it without my vision.
Yeah.
And then my whole engineering experience is all self-taught. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
See, that is
yeah.
what homesteaders do well. They learn how to do all these skills, and I'm sure what you've already learned will carry over into some of these other skills. Um, okay, so that's good to know. Okay, do you have currently any ideas for yourself on making your homestead profitable, if you were to do this?
No,
Okay.
because when I think about it, my goal is to keep the workload
Mm-hmm.
for the property minimal, so that way the other businesses support us,
Right.
our investments and our livelihood and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that way the homestead is really a grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
our um our providing for our overhead,
Mm-hmm.
our shelter, and everything, and then the businesses are what generate
Right.
the
The income.
margins, the
Okay.
income. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
So I love to like figure out what connections can be made in the things that you're already doing. And because you will have, doesn't, unless you just like really get intentional about only growing enough food for the three of you, you will always
yeah,
have a surplus. You
yeah,
always have too much, produce. You'll always have more than enough eggs. So you have that opportunity to use those things to sell or barter with other people, with your
yeah.
local community and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So my thought, I guess I'll just share it now, was that your pottery pots for people to grow food in, you could have plants that you're just selling, that you taken out from your garden, and you can sell plants that you made with pottery for, which
Hmm.
is so you're like killing two birds with one stone kind of thing. You're
Yeah.
making the pottery, and you have a use for it for the plants that are in the garden,
Well,
as well as
the other
eggs.
thing in, yeah, and jars.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Jars.
I can also make clay jars that screw in. So um, and then make those with molds and so forth. So then it's even more. Yeah, and even pots or
Yeah.
the other thing I thought
Bowls.
about
Mhm.
bowls. The other thing, if you don't have metal around or you need a big bowl,
Mhm.
I can throw up a nice big bowl for a water catcher or something like that,
Mhm.
and I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm going to charge you quite a bit of money for that,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but those are all things that I can do,
Yeah.
and um, yeah, I mean, from a
Yeah.
pottery standpoint, it's kind of endless, and especially if I have plaster around.
Mhm.
Oh, that's dangerous because I
Mhm.
can pretty much take any part that you need and then 3D print it. And then once I
Mhm.
3D print that part, then cast a mold. And
Mhm.
then next thing you know, I can make that part 100 times, and there you are.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's awesome. Yeah,
so
there's so many ideas. I just wanted to throw that out there so that you could see where my thought process is. You could have a farm
yeah,
stand that makes, a couple $100 or something outside, on the edge of your property, selling some of your pottery, having people come get some of your extra produce. It doesn't have to be that much extra work to make it work. Okay, so, based on the answers that you gave me, I really think you have like the right mindset. Like I said, I think property wise, like the size of your property only really matters if you want to add large livestock. You can do a lot with a quarter of an acre. So
okay,
if that's all you can, if that's all you can afford, you can do that with, with your pottery business there. Quarter of an acre is a lot of space to grow food. And as far as choosing the livestock to start with, since you do have a smaller family, you can start with things that are easier to that because they are contained. That way,
hmm,
that when you don't have to look for them, you don't have to try to get them back into their enclosure. So, like I mentioned earlier, quail are
hmm,
contained in a cage all the time, unless you make your quail aviary. I don't remember how to say that, but anyway, like unless you make a quail enclosure habitat, quail habitat. Rabbits are the same way, and rabbits will be your source of either, if you'd like to, it can be a source of meat, or it can be a source of fertilizer for your garden. What you want to have like a sustainable, because you don't want to go to the store, because you don't want to go outside, you want to have some sort of sustainable source of fertilizer. You can do worm farming as well, which is pretty low upkeep. But
okay,
as far as the livestock, I would stick to smaller animals to start. So
hmm,
quail, here's the thing about quail, and I have an podcast episode on this as well. So I will link that in the show notes, and I will share that with you as well. But um, quail from the time is first you can buy them as adults, so you don't have to. It's a lot easier to find adult quail, I think, than it is to find adult chickens because, well, I mean, depending on where you are. But
Mm.
quail, if you were to raise a quail from egg, it only takes 2 months before they could start producing. So they produce
Okay.
eggs in 2 months. A chicken takes 6 months, sometimes
Okay.
4, depending on the breed. So if you're raising it from a chick, it takes a lot longer to get to that point. And you're feeding them the whole time. You're spending electricity on keeping them warm when they're chicks. So there's a lot more investment for a chicken versus quail. The nice thing about quail is they produce eggs. They're small, but they produce eggs just similar to a chicken, a high producing chicken as well. They can be used for meat as well. They are, very. I don't have them. This is one of the things that I want to get. I used to own chucker, which are similar, but we
Uh-huh.
never use them for meat. We just use them for their eggs. But so I just think that is more of a for your size family and the sustainability that you're desiring, something that low upkeep. Quail would be good, and also rabbits, as I
Mm.
mentioned before. So I think as far as the livestock goes, that would be a really good thing for you to start with. Gardening, you can do it so many different ways, and the nice thing is if you're coming onto a piece of property that you are designing yourself for your needs and the needs that you have, you can put anything wherever you want it. You could make a T pattern or a X pattern or something that makes sense for you to walk in and out, and you can make an arrow. Like there's the
Yeah.
house. The house is that way,
Yeah.
or whatever. So how does that sound so far to you?
I mean, it sounds amazing.
Mhm.
Cause I've never really. Well, I need to try some kale eggs. I've never had quail eggs before. So,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, I'll be honest. I've only eaten chicken eggs my whole
Mhm.
life, and I don't think I've ever had any other eggs.
Mhm.
Um, and then I've only had duck once or twice. So it'd be
Mhm.
interesting to see what quail tastes like in regards to as a meat.
Yep.
Um, but and then I've never had rabbits. I've
Mhm.
played with rabbits, but I've never had rabbits. So
Mhm.
and then I do love your worm idea.
Mhm.
Because that is something that I was like, how can I make this land work? And so once, like, let's just say I'm moving the quail from one location to another and kind of moving the area around because like
Mhm.
I just feel like you want to let the land rest in certain areas
Mhm.
and um I read that in a history book. It's like one of the things the early settlers didn't really do. They didn't let the land
Mhm.
rest, and so they
Right.
didn't get as much produce out of it, and end up making a lot of them starve. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh, so you got to really think, oh, if I'm gonna make the land rest here and there, and how do I
Mhm.
do that, and what are the process, and so those would be things that I got to really think through, is
Yeah.
resting the land and
Yeah.
how does that
I
work?
Right. I wouldn't be too concerned about that at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's more for someone who is like, farming the land
Mm-hmm.
and has livestock. If you have container gardens, you're going to have to replenish the soil. You're going to have to keep putting stuff in there, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to let anything rest. You'll have to amend the
Uh-huh.
soil and keep adding to it, but over the years. But you don't have to you can let it rest, like as far as like don't grow tomatoes in it for 5 years straight or whatever. You can grow something else in it
Yeah.
to help replenish the soil. So there's things that you can do like that. And as far
Uh-huh.
as quail, you can put them in your garage. Like you don't even have to have they can go anywhere. They're in
Okay.
an actual like a rabbit style cage, so you can have your rabbits right next to your quail. You know,
Oh,
or
okay.
what or that sort of thing. So I'm just, as far as you starting off, start thinking smaller. Like
Okay.
like even if you get 2 properties, say to yourself, let's see what I can do with a quarter acre of this property first, build out that quarter acre, you can actually have extra, like the rest of your land could go to goats, which are actually good for small areas as well. If you ever wanted to do milk, that's more of a commitment is the milk.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
'Cause
but
the commitment level, I got to be careful because I mean,
mhm,
I even though I'll be homesteading, I still will be doing a lot of traveling because I get
mhm,
speaking gigs all the time, and
mm,
um, I'm always traveling to different conferences for different activities. So I
okay.
am home. I try to be home as much as I can, um,
Mhm,
and it is something that and my wife needs to be able to handle too.
mhm, yeah.
Not I don't want to make it too like I plan to do most of the work and then have the foster kids as well help me make it
Mhm,
like a family activity that we do all together. And so,
yeah. Yeah. So then you want to really think about the things that are low commitment, but that give you a good amount of food. Like I said, the quail produce eggs, and they're actually more nutritious. If you want to get on the scale of like which eggs are more nutritious, I think it's quail would be first. Duck is either right there by quail, and then it's chicken. So it's like if you want to think about nutrition wise, ducks are kind of nice too, in that they are easy to herd.
mm,
Then if chickens are out, you gotta run around and try to chase them. But if ducks, can be herded back to their location. So
yeah.
if that was something you think of, but I really think just to start, um, first I can help you find like podcasts and things to start listening to how to grow food. So
Hmm.
I would concentrate on the garden first and learning the process of growing food and how that works. Um,
Okay.
and then don't add the other things until you feel ready, but those would be the ones I would suggest. Something that can be caged and but you can still get food from, or in a container. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to make things
Yep.
easy. It would be easy for people to come and feed for you when you're away. There's no having to chase animals around, that sort of thing.
Well, it's just plain Marco Polo. You know,
Yeah.
they just might quack back like instead of
Yeah.
Marco Polo. You know.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
love it.
go ahead.
Keeping it simpler, it makes it. So I have to definitely have to do some more research on quail because it's
Hmm.
now you bring it up, I'm like, I mean,
Yeah.
is that something that we could do now given our current life?
Yeah.
Um,
You can.
it, yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
I've heard people have quail on in their apartment buildings because a lot of people can get away with quail because they sound like regular wild birds. So even if you're not loud technically, sometimes people, unless the neighbors complain, nobody knows that you have these quail, and you don't need a lot of them. Their eggs are a lot smaller, so it's three quail eggs to one chicken egg. So you got to think about how many
okay.
you would need for that, um but yeah, they people do them in small spaces. They're kind of good that way. We actually, just responsibility wise, I want quail because I want something that I can have as a meat source as well, but I don't really want to raise chickens anymore. Not right now
Mhm.
anyway. For meat, but quail are a better option for me because my family, am getting in that empty nesting stage, although they're all here now, but
Yeah.
but eventually I won't have any help like I did when I first started homesteading. So I'm thinking of how much I want to commit to it. And this is why I haven't gotten dairy goats again, because it's a big commitment. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. So some of the things to consider when you're looking for land, if you're able at the time of if you're searching, is how much is cleared already. So if you're in like a heavily wooded area, you want to make
Mhm.
sure that there's enough cleared space that you can start growing food right away, because you need to have light to grow the food.
Mhm.
So I would really look into like the type of property, like have somebody explain to you, or your wife, talk about it and figure out what type of property. Also, you probably don't want a lot of trees in your way either.
No. Yeah.
That would be a problem. So, cleared property. I would think about this at the very beginning. it doesn't matter if you get animals right away or not, is your perimeter fencing.
Okay.
Because you don't want to deal with animals that end up getting away. Even if you get a dog or whatever, like you
Mhm.
want to make sure that it's harder for those animals to get away, because that would be a really big problem for you if you had something leave the property.
Yeah.
It's also a huge expense in the beginning.
Mhm.
I mean, like it's a huge expense to get a whole property
Yeah.
perimeter fencing. But if you wait till later, um, you'll never get it done. Like us, for instance, we still don't have perimeter fencing, and
Yeah.
it's a really big problem. So it's just something
Okay.
to consider.
So yeah. So I mean, would you say um like a wiring fencing, a wood fence, or
Uh,
like what are some fencing ideas would
yeah,
you?
wire. I would say wire, something that something couldn't get out of easily. So I mean, just keep it in mind. Don't worry about it right now.
Okay.
Just know that that's one of those things that you want to think about at the very beginning, like how much fencing you have to get, even if you don't fence in your whole property and just portion of it that you're going to use for your homesteading stuff. Just fence that
Okay.
thing in, fence that sucker in at the
Yep.
beginning. Like, don't even. So, okay, so the size of property, like I said before, a quarter of an acre will do a lot. You will have to consider what is allowed on that property, like county and requirements for how many animals you're allowed to have on your property.
Well, could I
Yeah.
play the blind card? Like your website wasn't accessible, so I couldn't figure it out, and so
Yeah.
it's your fault.
I don't think the government ever lets anybody do that. Like government things or, like official city, they don't care. They'll charge you. Like you live in
Yeah.
California, they charge you for everything there.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
Yeah.
for sure. So.
Okay, and then like the one thing that you said earlier was internet access, and especially since you have a business, that you need to move. Think about where that is. So, location when you're looking for locations, make sure that there's at least something that's like ask around. Like, is this good? Is this provider good? You gotta really kind of get in there and ask, because sometimes they're not as good as they claim to be.
Mhm. Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
So in regards to like like finding land, like, that's something that I haven't like I googled like finding land, and like that's not something I really have done a lot on.
Mhm.
Like it's different when you are trying to buy a house,
Mhm.
but trying to find land, like how do you, or like what are some key words that you're trying to hear? 'Cause from
Right.
my perspective, I'm searching and then listening. So, what are some key words that are important that you would think for me um
Mhm.
to find land?
Okay. Well, first of all, why are you choosing land over a house, an existing house with property? Is
I
it
think cost wise would be the,
cost-wise?
yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Because normally once you can keep investing into it,
Right.
but but would you recommend more of already a house on the property?
I mean, if that is in your budget to find, for whatever area, it might be cheaper than what you're thinking, especially if you're coming from California and moving to somewhere that's not as expensive. It would save you a lot of time, and a heartache, like starting from scratch is really hard. We did that in
Hmm.
California. There's just a lot of time. Things, they say it's going to take 2 weeks, it takes through 2 months, that
Yep.
sort of thing. It just keeps getting pushed out, pushed out. So if you can find a property, even if it's a house that's a fixer upper, that's
Hmm.
actually a better option than finding just land. If you find a house
Uh-huh.
that's not condemnable or anything, you don't want it like that bad. But if it's just, it's an old, there's a lot of older houses that need a lot of upgrading, you could find something like that. Um, what I would do is actually try to search for a good realtor instead of
Uh-huh.
trying to do the keywords searching yourself, because right now there's a lot of realtors that are actually specializing in homestead properties. I see them popping up all the time. I have a friend here in Georgia that does that. they're specializing in finding real estate for people who want to live off their land, basically. So
Uh-huh.
you might want to, like, whatever state you're thinking about, or area in the state, try to, maybe find a Facebook group or something like that if you can, and start asking questions like, do you know a realtor that specializes in homesteading, selling
Uh-huh.
homesteads in this area? And that's the best I can say right now, because I don't know that there's anything like, you could go to those community websites, like Facebook groups, and just start asking questions about the area. That would be good. There's a lot of homesteading Facebook groups now. I mean, they're always huge. Like, they're like 50,000 people, but you know, so it's a really hot topic right now. And if you just put in keyword, this is what I would say as far as searching for Facebook groups, put in the keywords of the city, county, or state, or
Mhm.
portion of the state. So if it's like Northeast Georgia or something like that, put those words in, and then homestead. And
Uh-huh.
then you should be able to find uh, a homesteading group that is in that area, and then you can just start asking questions.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, if I didn't have to move out of San Diego, that would be ideal. But I mean,
Hmm.
reality, that's just property and land and everything here is just so expensive.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's like, but then the other thing is, and we haven't gotten to the big announcement, but
Hmm.
like I know the resources here in California, and
Hmm.
so it's like I go into another state, I have to relearn all that, but it
Hmm.
wouldn't be that hard to figure it out. But I think it would be, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
these are, I have all these mixed emotions, but I was like,
Hmm.
but if you keep your costs down and make it be affordable, then that's where I'm like, all right, could this work? Could this really
Hmm.
work?
Yeah.
And so,
So one thing I want to say before we talk about the next thing, which is an exciting project that you have, is that don't go into homesteading expecting it's going to be less money.
uh-huh.
Um, it can be, but especially at the upfront, there's going to be a lot of upfront costs getting started, which I'm sure you know. But sometimes, like, feeding livestock costs money, and feed prices change. This is why I'm saying start slow, start small.
Hmm.
Feed prices can go up really fast. What it will do, like you said before, it will save you some heartache of having to go to the grocery store, save you some time in that way. Like, especially if you have your own garden and a lot of produce you're growing, it
Hmm.
will save you that. Like, growing a garden is a no-brainer. Like, you must do that. Like, it really isn't that expensive to grow a garden. It's
Yeah.
adding the animals that may or may not be better for you financially. So just, like, keep that in mind. It may not be cheaper than, it may not be a cheaper option,
Uh-huh.
but it will be a better option probably for
Hmm.
you.
So, well, let me ask you this then. Like if you were so if we were doing the garden thing, and we are prepping for the feed, so could you grow your own feed to sustain your livestock, so that way it supporting the amount of livestock that you have,
Mhm.
as well you're getting your regular food garden stuff that you need on top of growing the livestock feed that you need as well.
Yeah. Well, it's more of, you can supplement their feed. Most of these animals really do need like a complete feed, which means that they have all the vitamins and minerals and stuff in that feed to make sure that the chickens are producing eggs with shells on them. Because
Hmm.
sometimes if they don't get enough calcium, they won't have, that. So you need to start with the base, which is the complete feed. So that's most people have to purchase that. And then you can supplement to offset some costs, and you could grow fodder, is what they call it. So fodder would be like grasses, or bushes, or things like that offset the costs for that. But yeah, unless you have, like, we're not talking big livestock right now, but if you
Yeah.
have big livestock, the only way you could they can eat grass and they can be pretty sustainable on just grass, but you have to have lots of acres to have, the grass, enough grass for them to be getting all their nutritional
Yeah.
needs.
Yeah. Well,
So,
yeah, I don't see myself going there. I think I'm going to be
yeah.
trading for that bigger
Hmm.
cut of steak there,
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably good. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's hear about the exciting project that you have coming up, because I'm sure our listeners would like to hear that.
Yeah. So, I don't know exactly when the podcast going to come out. It's going to either come right before or right after.
Hmm.
But I have March 4th is the Deafblind Potter School documentary, and it's been a dream of mine for years to build a pottery school to help people with intellectual disabilities, deafblindness, and blindness to be able to come to a pottery school and learn pottery and then turn it into a career. And my dream is to basically take these individuals, build a marketing plan around their story, and teach them a specific type of form of pottery that they are comfortable with and they can do over and over again, or they want to do more artsy stuff, and building their brand. And then they essentially become employees of my company, the Deafblind Potter School, and they're able to then make a living. And so all their marketing and all the things to promote their products is all done through my company. And they also have a lot better living wage than if they were on Social Security, SSI, and also they would also have really good health insurance. And this way, we're building sustainability in the disability community to be able to support themselves, feel empowered by making pottery and doing things like that, as well making a living and having the team around them that loves who they are. They celebrate who they are, as well are able to sell their product for them, so that they don't have to worry so much on the whole business. Like what I do right now, I gotta worry
Hmm.
about the whole business. And but with these individuals, they would be able to focus on the art, the craft, their abilities, their strength. That because like when I think about people with disabilities, I consider them superpowers,
Hmm.
not necessarily things that are not able to do something. It's a matter of how do I take that challenge that you face and turn it into a superpower.
Hmm.
And that's exactly what I loved being able to do. So like in the documentary, there's a guy there, and he's learning how to just take clay and make a little soap bowls. That's it. Like that's all we're doing. And him and I build a piece in that video
Hmm.
together. Um, but my goal with him would be to get him really dialed in on one style piece that he really loves making,
Hmm.
and it just feeds his joy and his love for life. And you get to watch it and buy his pottery pieces and all of that, and
Hmm.
he's able to self-sustain himself. And so,
That's
yeah, so
awesome.
the documentary coming out, it's a short documentary. It's about 4 minutes long,
Mhm.
but it's being picked up by one of the biggest film festivals in the world.
Mhm.
And so, super exciting.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And where can people find out more information about that?
Yeah.
How can the homesteading community listening right now support you?
So the documentary will be at school.deafblindpotter.com. So that's school.deafblindpotter.com.
Okay.
And that also has the donation page and getting
Mhm.
on the email list. And so that would be where everything you're gonna want to know is gonna be there. And then if you go to deafblindpotter.com, you'll be able to see everything about me and the story and my vision behind the Deafblind Potter School and all of that there. And if you want to buy pottery pieces, and we just put a bunch of mugs up just recently. So if you want some
Mhm.
mugs, they're not cheap, but
Mhm.
they do come with a powerful message
Mhm.
that you can have joy in your pain. You can
Mhm.
persevere and build a character that has hope. And the piece itself is your hope. And every
Mhm.
time you have coffee or tea or something out of it, you're reminded that even though today might be difficult,
Mm.
you can persevere through this challenge today because you have the hope that you need for the day.
That's
And so,
awesome.
yeah.
I
So
love that message. I love that.
so deafblindpotter.com is my website, and then the documentary, all the stuff related to that is at school.deafblindpotter.com.
Okay, awesome. Well,
So,
thank you so much for coming on and letting me coach you. And I'm sure this is going to be a really great episode for people to listen to, because this is, first of all, this is the first coaching episode I've done on the podcast. So this is, but anyway, it was a thrill to talk to you, and just everyone who's listening to this, make sure that you go to the links that I have in the show notes to support Kelvin and his projects and things, and do it quickly, because the faster he gets the support, the better it will be for his school that he has coming up. So thank
and
you.
my homesteading.
And your
things.
homesteading, yes, and your homesteading project. Yes. All
Yeah.
right. Thank you so much, Kelvin.
Nope. Thank you. And like I always say, go live beyond your challenges.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about what Kelvin is doing, just be sure to look in the show notes in the description area of this podcast episode, and you'll see all of his links there, as well as the Homesteading for Beginners checklist. If you really want to get started with your homesteading journey and you want to know where to start, the Homesteading for Beginners checklist is the place to start. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me at mona@healthyhomesteading.com. You can email me there and I can get to you that information. Very soon I will be having a homesteading starter kit available, so make sure that you get on my email list, and you can do that by getting the checklist as well. So the starter kit just will be something that will help people like you and Kelvin to get started on their journey in the easiest way possible, with the best results possible. So I hope you take advantage of that. So you can sign up for the wait list for that in the show notes as well. Okay, have a wonderful rest of your day, your evening, wherever you are. I just hope everything is well and that you are doing well.